Hey, I'm an addict named Steph.
Hey,
Steph. I feel like I'm at my home group or something. It's nice, intimate, small small group. I got a phone call and they were like, "Hey, you wanna share at a workshop?" And I was like, "What time?" They're like 9. And I was like, "Ugh, okay. What's the topic?" They're like, "In times of illness," and I just laughed. Because my recovery, like my last year of before I got clean, and countless times since I've been clean, I've had moments and issues in recovery. I've gotten sick. I've had messed up spinal cord. I've had just numerous issues. And I've had to learn how to navigate taking care of myself, having relationships with physicians, having relationships with my sponsor, and staying clean through the whole ordeal. Before I got clean, I felt I had gotten into a really bad car accident, and it pretty much destroyed my cervical spine. And I felt from that point that I had a ticket to use. Like, I was broken, I was in chronic pain, I had several issues with my limbs, and that I had the right to use as many drugs as I possibly could get into my body. And I would manipulate as many physicians as I could to be able to get what I wanted. And it brought me to my bottom in a year. And it's a really big part of my story, because when I got clean, I required 2 more reconstructive spinal surgeries. And unfortunately, I don't have that same mentality of that I have a ticket to use anymore. I have to be diligent, and I have to be on top of things. I have to have a relationship with my higher power. Having a relationship with God through this has helped me immensely, because a lot of times when it's just me and my feelings, the only thing I got is my higher power to help get me through it. Because for me, it wasn't easy to wake up in immense pain at 3 o'clock in the morning and want to pick up my phone, because I don't want to inconvenience anybody. At the time when I had to have reconstructive surgery, and I was 6 years clean, and I was like, I'm too clean to be having this problem of wanting to use, which is bullshit, and it's what my disease tells me. Because if I don't reach out, then I am going to use. If I don't tell my sponsor what's going on, I could possibly get high, because all that stuff that I'm holding on to will eventually tear me apart. I got to a point where I was on disability, I was out of work, I was on short-term disability with work. I was only getting 60% of my pay, and I was about to lose my house. I barely could afford my car. I was trying to go to food pantries to get groceries, and I was 6 years clean, and I was like, this is what should not be happening to me at 6 years clean. And that's the problem with the disease, is that it likes to tell me where I'm supposed to be, and then let me know that I'm not there, and just give up where you're at. And I wanted to. For me, I got to a really low point, and I wanted to get loaded. I wasn't talking to my higher power. I wasn't talking to my sponsor. I was isolated. I was miserable. And the fact that I had all this health issues going on just compacted itself into this horrible situation I made it out to be. And I don't want to digress on the misery of it, but I want to be able to shed some light on what was going on with me at 6 years clean versus when it happened again when I was 10 years clean. And when I was 10 years clean, I flipped backwards down a set of tile stairs and broke my neck. And I was calling my sponsor regularly. I had a relationship with my higher power. I was talking to the fellowship regularly. People were seeing me regularly. But the only reason people were seeing me and checking on me is because I was reaching out. No one checked on me when I was 6 years clean because I wasn't reaching out. I wasn't telling anybody. You know, my sponsor will tell you she was pretty sure and she was pretty scared that I was going to end up killing myself because I was so miserable. So for me, in times of illness is when it does happen, because I know I can't speak for everybody, I can speak for myself, because it's not about if, it's about when. And the stuff always happens. I've had the wonderful opportunity to age in recovery. And with age comes ailment. And that's okay, you know, because I know where my head needs to be. Like dealing with illness, I can either be positive about it and I can be diligent, or I can let it take over me and tear me to the ground. And that's where my disease wants me, is on the ground. And I don't want to be there. You know, I deal with illness way differently now. About 4 years ago, I got really sick, or 5 years ago, I got really sick and almost died. I was in the hospital, and people were there, and at the time, I lost my apartment. They were like, you didn't pay your rent, so we're evicting you. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And I really wasn't like, oh, I can't believe I'm losing everything that I ever had, and my life is just terrible. I was like, okay, well, this is just a bump in the road. You know, I think it's like in our Just for Today talks about making mountains out of molehills. And then what I've realized is the majority of the stuff that goes on in my life is just molehills. Like when I lost my apartment, I still had some place to stay. When I needed to clear my apartment out and was in the hospital, I had friends that went and cleared it out for me and salvaged my stuff. You know, for me, when my head's in the right game and I'm having a constant conscious contact with my higher power, my perspective is way different. Because for me, that's what it's all about when it comes to when times are rough, is perspective. It's like my sponsor told me years ago when I was really upset and so offended by everything. Everything offended me. I used to find dope on the ground and eat it, but yet I was offended by someone saying something negative about me. And and I completely lost my train of thought. Let's just be honest there. I went back to thinking I'm just kind of all over the place, and I'm just going to be honest there. I'm not going to pretend that I am very fluid with my sharing. But that's besides the point. Just give me a second, and I'll find my place. You know, I used to be really scared to share. I used to get anxiety really bad. In times of illness, the pamphlet or the booklet talks about mental health, and in our literature, it talks about the fact that, you know, I need to find a sponsor. We need to find a sponsor. And that sponsor is not a lawyer, is not a marriage counselor, is not a banker, you know, is not a doctor. Even if they are any of those, they're not mine. You know, I have to seek professional advice when I need professional advice. When I'm struggling with my taxes, I find a CPA. You know, when I went and buy a house, I talked to a real estate agent. And when I struggle with my mental health, I went and talked to a doctor. And with that, I have the guidance of my sponsor as I'm doing that stuff. because that's what they're there for. But they're not there to tell me if I should or if I shouldn't take medication and what kind of medication I should take. That's the doctor's discretion. And when it comes to being able to have a healthy relationship with the doctor, I have to be honest about my history. My doctors know that I am a recovering addict. And I've been through situations where I was completely honest with my physicians and they didn't want to treat me because I was a drug addict. Granted, they didn't care how long I'd been clean and they didn't know what kind of program I worked, but they didn't want to treat me. And I've had to learn to find doctors that would treat me responsibly. Because sometimes the only thing that I can do is trust God that I'll find the answers that I need and find the right people to get those answers from. I struggled with mental health before I got clean, but I didn't take anything regularly. I took everything irregularly and in large quantities, and that really didn't help my mental health. When I got clean, I was about 2 or 3 years clean, and I wanted to die. And I did my checklist. I do a mental checklist when I'm struggling, because that's what I was going to say before. My sponsor from a long time ago told me feelings aren't facts, and that pissed me off because my feelings were hurting me really bad, and they had to be factual. But I have this checklist I go over, and I'm like, okay, am I driving? Am I in a car that I own? Am I working? Do I go home with a roof over my head? Do my friends, do I have friends that I talk to regularly? Am I calling my sponsor? Am I talking to my higher power? If all those boxes check yes, then whatever I'm feeling is bullcrap. And I just have to kind of weather through it. So I got about 3 years clean, and I was like, I did not want to live anymore. I was visualizing myself like driving off bridges. I was, drowning in bathtubs. I was hoping that I wouldn't wake up, and I was like, this isn't healthy. This isn't good. So I talked to my sponsor. My sponsor was like, you need to go get professional help, and I went and sought out for professional help, and actually took medication for my mental health, and responsibly, unlike I did before I got clean, and life got a little better. I still have to work on myself. I still have to work steps. I still have to talk to my sponsor. I still have to continue conscious contact with my higher power. All of those work together. And it's really hard, I think, to talk about mental health like in the rooms. I feel like sometimes I've watched people give advice about not taking medication. Oh, you don't need to take that. You're not an effing doctor. And if you are, you're not my doctor. I know that I practice medicine, but I'm not practicing medicine on anybody else in this room or in this fellowship. Regardless, I'm not taking that responsibility. Shoot, when I'm your sponsor, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm going to give you suggestions, because I'm not taking responsibility for your life. I'm going to hope that you take my suggestion. And my sponsor expects the same thing from me. I really thought that having so much experience with illness, I'd share for like 4 hours. But a lot of the sharing that came from dealing with illness was about sharing pain. And I've learned and I've been taught that when I share, I need to share the solution. And it cut my sharing down a whole lot. Like over the years, I used to think, man, when I would share my story, I would tell you all those war stories and tell you how cool I was in the streets. And that's not what it's about. Like, the longer I stay clean and the more recovery I get, the more good stuff I have to share, but the shorter it gets. Because I figured out, because by the time I get from point A to point B and I get to the solution, it's so simple. And that's what the program tells me. You know, it's a very simple program. It's not easy by any means. You know, if it was easy, I would work all 12 steps like 18 times by now, but I'm only on like my third one, so there's that. And I'm really grateful that they called me and asked me to share on this because, you know, for some reason, I get sponsees sent to me that have the same bottoms that I do, that had the same struggles that I do. You know, coming from, you know, a mental health, chronic pain background, I was like a hub. Hopefully a hub of hope. I didn't feel that way when at 2 or 3 years clean, I thought, you know, I was like, what do I have to offer? You know, my bottom, I felt like it talks about, you know, the little old lady scamming physicians in our literature in Just for Today. And I'm like, I was scamming physicians. I wasn't a little old lady. I don't relate. I'm not a drug addict. I take stuff that's prescribed to me. I don't take it as prescribed, but it was prescribed. You know, I'm grateful to have lived and hit the bottom that I hit, because I know what not to do today. Like, I have a clear vision of what not to do when I'm dealing with illness, when I'm dealing with surgery, when I'm dealing with chronic pain, when I'm dealing with I know exactly what not to do. Now my disease tells me maybe you should try it. Maybe you should try taking extra. You know, maybe you should tell the doctor this. And as long as I'm communicating with my sponsor and my higher power, because that's who's in the room with me when I'm talking to the physicians, my higher power. And the literature says some days the only thing between you and a bag of dope is going to be your relationship with your higher power. And that's kind of like how it's been for me throughout the years in dealing with illness, is that physician and my relationships with them in the past, I've had to have a really clear understanding of my higher power and a very open communication with my higher power before I start talking to doctors, because my disease will tell me to manipulate them. And it's easier to act on my disease when I'm not talking to my higher power. That's how I deal with my illness, with illnesses, is I make sure that my relationship with my higher power is on point, that I'm working steps, that I'm being honest with my sponsor, that I'm being honest with my circle. Everything else just kind of works itself out if I'm taking care of myself in that way. That's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. I'm Johnny, recovering addict.
Hey.
When I was asked to share on this topic, I thought about, wow, I came in this program sick, physically, and didn't really think about it, you know, because I just did the next right thing. And as time progressed, you know, I had this picture of what type of old lady I was going to be. And I was going to be that one that was still, you know, walking the marathons and rolling all on the floor with the grandkids and all that kind of shit. I can roll on the floor, I just can't get up. So my little 4-year-old helps me up. It's cute to watch. We both struggling for me to get off the floor. When I first had surgery in this program, it was major surgery. So I told the doctor I'm a recovering addict and what all that is, and he said, well, Ms. Hampton, he said, I commend you. He said, but let me tell you, you are going to be in the worst pain of your life. So I said it again. I'm a recovering addict, no mood altered, and, you know, explain the whole deal. And so he gave me the stuff, and I said, okay, just this amount. And I made it was 21 of them. And I made it last about 8 weeks. Because what I did was, I had to sleep in the den in the recliner because I couldn't lay in the bed. It was like half of my body was just. So I figured out my pain threshold. So between 2 and 3 in the morning would be when I had the worst pain. So that was how I got things to stretch out. And I shared with my sponsor, and I shared with other recovering addicts, and my husband who's in recovery, and got through that one. And then I had I think I had an accident. So I went to another city to see this doctor because he's supposed to be the best one for what was wrong with me. And so I tell him I'm a recovering addict, no mood altering chemicals, mind changing. And so he proceeded to tell me about addiction, and I said, okay, I understand that. I said, but I'm not going to take him. So my husband was out in the lobby. I said, wait. So I went and I said, come. So he came, and he's a talker. So I'm sitting on the table, the table they have you sitting on to check you out. So I'm looking at them just having wits to see who knows the most. So finally I just interrupted and I said, look, you give me this, it's not mood altering, and I'll get out of your office. And you come go with me. So that's how that one worked. And as time rocked, I was real grateful that I worked some steps. Because had I not worked any steps, I would not have had a foundation to endure what God had laid out for me in the coming years. I had some sponsees that, 2 of them, that were very, very ill, and they both died. And I thought, I'm gonna die. That's why you put these ladies in my life, because eventually I'm gonna die. And what I learned from each of them was, with one, no matter what, she went to meetings. She went to meetings, and if we had to hold her up, she was there, And with the other one, her relationship with the God of her understanding was so tremendous. And I wanted that, and we would talk about our higher powers together, and how he worked in her life and how he worked in my life and how we applied the steps. So that one was the last one to die. Her birthday was yesterday. About 2 years, maybe 3 years, I think, I had breast cancer. And I said, oh, okay, this is what you were getting me ready for. And according to folks, I went through it like a trooper, whatever that is. Because I remember having my meltdowns, talking to my higher power, crying to my higher power. I had some pity pot days, and one night one of my youngest sponsees called, and I just, and poor baby, she didn't know what to do with it. She couldn't wait to get off the phone with me so she could call somebody, and all these people started calling me that had more clean time than her to, walk me through it, and I was real grateful for that. The literature talks about separating our personal illnesses because it's about the business of our recovery. It's about our addiction and how we handle that. And the steps. That was the way that I got through it. Now, mind you, with my cancer, I did chemo and radiation, all that stuff. And I did a large dose of chemo for, and when I was thinking about this topic, all I could think about was my higher power's love. My higher power's love for me. Because during this whole process, he already had it set up, man. I was out of work for 9 months. And I had that much leave. And then some forfeited. And I was so grateful for that. And I was like, look at you and your infinite wisdom, how you took care of me, you know? And he had people in my life that happened to be off from work, retired or whatever, that could go to chemo with me and sit there those hours, you know, and we talk about recovery and we laugh and we cry and we just had a good time. And my little cubicle was the area where all the nurses came because we would just have so much fun and laugh hysterical. And it was recovery, what they were attracted to and what they saw. Because had they seen us used before, they wouldn't have wanted to be around us. So getting through that, I've been really grateful. And as God would have it, my mom had breast cancer, my baby sister, you know, and we just found out the other day that my mom, they found another spot on her liver. And everybody's like, don't tell Johnny. You know, she can't handle. And I don't know where the heck they get that from. You know, I'm the one I'll cry watching a movie or a sad thing, you know. So maybe they confuse that with I can't handle stuff. I don't know. But I went to see my mom, and that's a strong little lady, let me tell you. And I started praying, and I had a sense of gratitude because when she went through her first bout, I took care of her. I changed the bandage. I was there. I cooked. I washed for her and my dad, and I was so proud of that. That one, that I was clean and I could do it, and two, I wanted to do it. You know what I mean? I wanted to do it. I mean, I was like this little Johnny, I could picture it, just taking care of it. I was so proud and just felt so grateful for that. And, oh yeah, my brother has stage 4 lung cancer and dementia brought on by using the liquid drug. So there's, you know, but y'all said I can handle this. God allowed it to happen at a time where I can handle this. I'm going to retire the end of April. I'm so happy. I just turned 62 and have over 30 years on my job. I can't wait to retire. But I'm going to take care of my folks. I sure am. I'm going to go spend the night at my mom's for a while and then go back to my house, and because she's going to need a break with my brother, you know. And there's that love again. God affording a way, made a path for me to be able to do that. And that my health, by the grace of God, is on the up and up. It's, you know, I'm pretty straight. You know, I have chemo fog. You know, we were riding here and my husband was trying to make me remember coming here before, and I said, how many years ago? And he said, and I was like, okay, something will come back to me, you know. And the kind of work that I do, that kind of hinders my work. But what was real important for me, guys, is having somebody, you know, when you have time, sometimes it's hard when you have time because people, and you're sick or something's going on with you, because I don't know where people have you, but when I reached out and I would call, you know, oh, well, you know, but no, I'm telling you where I am and what's going on with me, but you want to have me over here because it's more comfortable for you. So I remember going to a meeting one night and saying, well, look, what you're going to do, you're just going to let me die because I have time? Illness, time, and aging is where I am. While I was going through my chemo and radiation, I was doing good. This past year has been hell for me because I am going through the mental and emotional residue from it. And then somebody said, oh, you got post-traumatic stress. I was like, well, damn, yes, I do. I didn't even think about that. And it has really kind of whipped me up. But going to meetings and sharing about it and talking to my doctors and talking to my coworkers has really helped. One of the things early on in recovery that was important for me was realizing I'm not a superwoman. Now that might not sound like much to you, but that was like, thank you God, which has enabled me to grow in my recovery. Because I don't have to put that hat on. I can feel today, I can cry, I can stomp, I can scream. And let me tell you something, I recommend it. I recommend it, not staying there, but allow myself to be there. Because see, I wore the mask, I wore the face of everything's all right, I can handle it, you know, come to Johnny. And everybody, she's strong, I don't let you put me there today. I am not that strong, and let's go get you what you need. I'm not trying to shoulder it anymore today, not by myself. That's what I got from working the steps. But, you know, step 6 tells us that when we get there, it's some stuff we can no longer do anymore and be comfortable in our own skin. This behavior, I gotta let go. Thank God. That's one of my favorite steps. Being entirely ready. You know, when I used to work that step, I would get up every morning and tell God what I'm going to work on. You know, I had to twist it. But I am really grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. You know, because I remember trying to die on some non-dying days. That's suffering. That's what suffering is. My husband, I forgot about him in the equation. He had to deal with what was going on with me too. And you know, he would come peep in the bedroom, he would peer. As if I was contagious or something. And just peep in, you all right? Yeah, you can come in. Yeah. So I had to sit and I had to talk to him and I had to understand how he felt about what I was going through. What his fears were, you know. But you know, somebody had to tell me that. My sponsor said, if those people tell you you need medication, you better take it. My friends in recovery told me that. And I did. Again, I knew my pain threshold, and I still have pain today because of some scar tissue. And it's going on 3 years. You know, I go to physical therapy and all that stuff, but it's still there, you know. What I have gone through has helped me in a number of ways in my life. I was a vain person, you know. The disfiguring of my body I have some feelings about that, you know. For a long time, I wouldn't allow my husband to see me. And then one day, you know, I forgot. So once he saw it, it was like, okay, this is the ugly truth, you know. But he just smiled and hugged me. getting the right, you were talking about the right perspective, you know, getting the right perspective on things. I love the Just for Today because it helps me to stay into the day and get the right perspective on anything that's happening in my life. You know, because I can take something and twist it in a minute. But if I can calm down and I can center myself, it's like, okay, this is all it is. Nothing more and nothing less. You know, you went through this ordeal at a time that your higher power allowed you, know, knew that you could do it, you could handle it, and you're on the other side, you're alive. And you know, I didn't want to use. I never once wanted to use. I fell on my job, and I went to this doctor, you know, workers' comp doctor, and just ishing out the stuff, and I was like, well, I don't want this. It makes me loopy, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, this is how you create addicts. This right here. So I fell again, kind of clumsy. I was going to visit a client, and another client was talking to me while I was walking to the apartment. Now, I was 61, and I'm older and had already fallen before, and so I don't know, it was like slow motion, man, you know? So I was falling, and I had my hands out, because there was nothing around to hold me. But there's some people, the girl was here, a guy over here, and one across the street, and all this stuff is going on my head before I hit the pavement. So it's like, okay, you're gonna fall. There's nothing to break the fall. Which way, how are you gonna do it? So I wouldn't hurt myself, right? There was just no other way to do it but just go out like this, okay? So the girl is standing there with her mouth open going, "What?" And I'm looking like, why the hell aren't you helping me break this fall? But there I go. So I injured my hand and my knee again, and going through physical therapy and telling the doctor I'm a recovering addict, and, you know, and there was no problem. There was no problem. So they were like, okay, Ms. Hampton, well, this is what we're gonna do, and this is, you know, and I'm like, okay. So I go for my physical therapy, and I do my steps, I go to my meetings, I talk to my sponsor, I live life. You know, a young lady called me yesterday, and she was going through something, and they said, call Johnny. So what she went through was, what I understand, was bad enough for her. And she said, but I said, you should be right where you are with it. And don't let anybody else tell you how you're supposed to feel and deal with this. And I told her about my experience about taking the Superwoman hat off and how that just really helped me to live. And I said, you can cry and you can have a fit, but you got to decide how long. And if you take too long, and I said, then I can cut it off for you. You know, give you a day or 2 days. How many days you think you'll need? She said, well, it's been 3. Maybe by the time I go to bed tonight, take the bubble bath and all that, what you told me to do? I said, sounds great. Being able to be okay in my own skin and be who I am has been the greatest gift that I have gotten as a result of working these steps. Being honest and true to myself, and rigorously honest with you guys and with the doctors and with my sponsor and with my family about where I am and what's going on with me. I don't want to lose my clean time. I do not. So I'm going to follow the suggestions you give me. I'm going to do what the steps say. I'm going to follow the suggestions my sponsor give me, and I'm going to keep coming back. Thanks for letting me share.
Let's give our speakers another hand, and then we'll open the floor for comments.